Okay, so I'll call to order the Conservation Commission Inland Wetland Agency meeting on Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. It's 6:03 p.m. And can we get a roll call
Absolutely. Cheryl Brown,
here?
Heather Breslin,
Here.
Catherine Knight,
Here.
and Ed Halwico.
Here.
Perfect. So you do have 4, you have a quorum.
Okay, so we'll move on to public comment. And do we have anybody? See an attendee.
So attendees, if you, public comment is for general comments, not pertaining to any pending wetland permit applications. And if you are here to just listen in, that's great. And if you have a general comment, you can use the raise your hand feature to speak. But if it's about a specific application, we can't let you speak at this time. If an application has a pending public hearing, that's when you can talk about speak to a particular application. So I think the attendee is just listening in as an interested party and not here to speak tonight.
Okay, then we'll move on to receipt and discussion. S23-624 20 Edith Lane, Pinedo. I'm sorry if I'm getting that last name wrong. For a correction action, filling, grading, and landscaping in and adjacent to a wetland and a water course.
Right.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick overview of the location and why the application is before you. So as you noted, it's a corrective action application. So the end of Edith Lane, which I think I'm sharing a aerial photograph. This is Route 7. This is Main Avenue. Over here is West Rocks Road and West Rocks Middle School and All Saints. And where the arrow is the end of Edith Lane. And I'll just zoom in. So this is the end of Edith Lane at the top of the screen. There is a water course at the bottom of the screen. This is Winnapock condominiums off of Aiken Street. And so this is the property in question here. And the work that they're seeking to correct is in the rear, and it is within the upland review area of the wetland and water course. And with that, I don't know. So I know that Mr. Pinedo, you're here, and the engineer Wayne Devanzo is here. So if either of you want to describe the proposal, and if you need me to, I can share your submitted site plan to everyone as well. Just let me know.
Mr. Pinedo, would you like me to share? Can I share my screen? I have the drawing.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the site, and this is the area that had been filled. And if you look closely, you can see there's really 3 contours on there. The reddish contours are the contours that are out there today, and the lighter ones are the pre-existing contours. And then the black ones with the boxes are what's being proposed. So what we're, basically this site was filled pretty significantly in this area and down towards the wetlands. And the proposed grading is seeking to cut this back and get it somewhat closer to what was existing. And again, the black lines are the proposed grading. In this flatter area, it's roughly a 2-foot cut. And then as we get into the steeper areas, it's about a 6-foot excavation to restore the grades. We'll be providing erosion control mats on the steep areas during the process to keep the erosion to a minimum, along with obviously silt fencing all along the perimeter to maintain the runoff and the silt runoff. That is
Wayne, can you just point out the location of the wetlands relative to? what
sure,
you're
yeah.
talking about?
And the wetlands are, if you can see the cursor, they're in this area. And if you can see the flags, the triangles. And the grading is, in this upper area. And that's the setback. So the setback is roughly where the steeper section begins. And that's basically it.
Sorry, one more time. The gray lines are what would existed previously.
Yeah, these grayish lines,
Yeah.
the original existing grades, these more like reddish, I'd say reddish.
Yep.
Are what's there today. And
Okay.
this is what's proposed.
So, would you be able to give us a little background? I don't think Heather, Commissioner Breslin was, were you,
At the
have you
last,
seen a presentation on this?
I was
Right.
not. I was.
Okay, so I think, if we could get kind of a little bit of an overview of, kind of how we ended up here, I think that would be really helpful for the commissioners to remind them and also to introduce the project.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so maybe I'll go through some photographs real quick. Would that help? And then is that what you're talking about? I think you might be remembering I did issue an enforcement order, and that triggered the need for a show cause hearing. And so I did go through quite a few aerial photographs and then site photographs of the site. And then the agency did uphold that order, and that's why the applicant is here today. But I can.
That's okay. If that's, I mean, if
well,
it's
no,
only me.
No, we're good. We'll go quick. Let's see. I'm just thinking about the easiest way to share stuff. If I share this. Okay, so I'll start with just some aerial photographs of the site, and then I will show you some site photographs so that you just get a better idea of the lay of the land. And then as for any application, I strongly recommend that you take the time to stop by, knock on the door, and announce who you are, and just have a look in person, because even the best maps it's really hard to figure out what's going on without being there. So this is the property here, 20 Edith Lane. This is what it looked like in 2017, so a while ago. The backyard was more wooded. And as you can see from the survey, when the contour lines are close together, the grade is steep, and when the contour lines are wide apart, it's relatively flat. So the coming out of the back of the property was relatively steep down to kind of a valley in this area here. And I should be able to go. So this is what it looked like in 2021. It looks more different than it actually was, but there were still some trees, and no grading had occurred. And then in 2022, in the spring of 2022, more trees had been cleared. And then this is what it looked like earlier this year in March 2023, after the area of filling. So the black lines here are the silt fence that the homeowner installed as directed. The silt fence is at the top of slope, and this is at the toe of the slope. So this area is the relatively flat area that Mr. Davanzo described. It's now relatively flat. So this is the bulk of the fill area. And it goes from, as he said, some fill down to more fill. This black line and then these two areas are excavation into the fill to determine, these were done to determine what type of fill was deposited there. So these are two pits that are showing up. And then this is a trench. Originally, when the fill was deposited, the property owner had installed a pipe to collect any standing water in this location and bring it under the fill to outlet down here in this location. So what you're seeing is actually the trench. He removed that pipe, and this is the open trench that remains. Then let's see if I can navigate to a couple site photos. I have to all right, let me just flip through some real quick. So this is looking at, this is the house at gosh, I'm blanking, 20 Edith Lane. This is that first row of silt fence at the top of slope, and this is the toe of slope, and this is the fill area. So you can get an idea of the similar pre-existing topography, probably similar vegetation, and what it looked like. This was last winter. I'll just quickly go through these because I've got a gazillion. Not helpful. This is the location of that trench, and this is the pipe that was previously installed that's since been removed. This is a relatively now flat yard. You can kind of tell from the stepped fence that's along the eastern property line that there had been kind of a valley in this general location. This is the trench that you can see the shadow of in the aerial photo. This is the same trench looking down towards the ponded area on the Winnapaw condo property. And then the pink flags are some of the wetland flags here, 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 here. Well, let's see, I think I have and so this was during the original notice of violation that was sent. This is the conditions that we found. This is the type of material that's in the fill that was brought in. Let's see, I have some better photos somewhere. So again, this is the wetland, the ponded area, and on the side of the fill slope. And so one of the issues is so in addition to needing a inland wetland permit, a fill and excavation permit is also required, and that's administered through our Public Works Department. The fill and excavation permit defines suitable fill versus unsuitable fill. Unsuitable fill includes stuff like plastic, construction debris, wood, asphalt, and other materials. So the let me see about it. Let me just flip through these. Here's a good one. So on this one, the house is off the screen to the right, and you can kind of get a feel for the extent of fill material. And as I was saying before, a lot of a fair amount of the fill material is unsuitable. Go back to share. So this is Mr. Devanzo's site plan. It's based on a survey that the homeowner had done. And one of the things that they are proposing is to have a temporary stockpile and staging area. They do plan to screen the fill material and then redeposit it. So I think that's an important thing for you to know. So the fill material will be eventually kind of brought up to either this area or some area that's as far from the wetland as possible, screened. Any unsuitable fill material would be removed and hauled off site, and the suitable dirt soil would remain and be used to complete the proposed grading plan. Mr. Devanzo or Mr. Pignatto, correct me if I've misstated anything incorrectly. You can just jump in as the applicant.
Sounded okay to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay for me.
Okay. I'll keep going then. So that's the proposed a grading plan, and they are proposing to remove the fill from it. There's a little bit of fill that just cuts into the uppermost part of this wetland here. Well, I should say the presumed upper extent of the wetland. It is under a bit of fill, this area. So I'm not certain that the wetland ends right here, but it probably ends somewhere close. They would remove fill from the wetland and at a distance of at least 25 feet until you get kind of over here from this part of the wetland. And then I'll just continue to share my screen. He also submitted a landscaping plan. And so on this plan, underneath is the grading plan. So this area would be that new steeper slope uphill of the wetland area. And they propose that at the more or less the top of the new slope would be grass and lawn, and then at the steeper slope would be a restored buffer. And so they have a planting schedule here. They're proposing 5 trees and 15 shrubs within the area. The entire property, just for scale, is I believe about 3/4 of an acre. So this is obviously less than that. I think that's all that I know. So maybe I don't know if Raul or Wayne, if you have any ballpark estimates for the duration or the time that it might take to remove the material, and like the time from how long do you think it would take if the commission were to approve your application today, which they can't, but as an example, if they were approved today, how long would it take to complete all the screening and grading activity that you propose, so that you could do the planting?
I would guess, that might be with the screening and everything, maybe a 3-week process, possibly.
I have a question just in looking at the grading. If I understand correctly, the grading being proposed is this, I don't know what the percentage is. So what's the percentage grade that's being asked to be put into the upland review area? Because that's a significant change from what the grading was existing. So I'm just trying to understand. It looks like it goes from 148 to 138 previously it was not as steep in the upland review area.
Yeah, it's right, it's 2-to-1, that's a 2-to-1 slope in that steep area. That's proposed, the 148 to 138.
So a 2-to-1 slope, meaning for every 2 feet of horizontal, there'd be a 1 foot increase in
Yeah.
grade.
Correct, yes, I'm sorry, yes, that's right.
Did you look at making it a 3-to-1 slope by any chance? 2-to-1 is pretty difficult to stabilize.
We did not, I mean, we could alter it, but that was what was suggested.
Recommended by the applicant, I presume, right?
Correct, that's right.
Yeah, I think that we would need to know how the 2-to-1 slope was going to be stabilized to keep it with a little more detail. And I just, I know that a 2-to-1 slope is something that has a tendency to erode. So it would be good to have a professional to speak to making sure that doesn't happen, or examining how to lessen that slope.
I mean, one of the things that I'd want to understand, just, you know, in understanding that the impact on the wetland from the change of grading, from moving it basically into the upland review area, because that's a significant activity.
Alexis, do you have recommendations on how to get somebody to weigh in on the slopes and the drainage?
So it sounds like you are saying that you would want to see an environmental or a wetland impact assessment. I mean, is that what you're? I think that
I
would be
think
an ecologist or a professional wetland scientist that would talk to the impacts one would anticipate to the wetland. So Mr. Devanzo, I believe, is a professional engineer.
That's correct, right?
Yeah. And so he would be a, you know, as a licensed engineer, he should be able to, and I think he does certify the proposed erosion controls. That's not to say that there might be an opportunity to look at them again to make sure that they are going to work, both the design of the slope and then the erosion controls that are proposed. So that's that, you know, the slope stability part of it, making sure that the proposed measures will do their job for the site conditions that are proposed. And then the other questions regarding, well, how does that slope, the alteration of the slope as a buffer to the wetland impact the wetland? I think that would be more of a wetland assessment. And then likewise, a wetland assessment would look at the impacts of to the wetland, were there to be some amount of sedimentation or erosion issues, more than what's, you know, already occurred.
Do any other commissioners have any comments or thoughts on this? Okay, oh, yep. Sorry, I thought I heard.
No, that's okay. I just had a question on also like I agree. I don't know to what extent the erosion, what that would look like. And I guess also how that would affect the landscaping effort in that area, right?
So I think where we're coming to is that we might need some more information about the slope and additionally the impact to the wetland. So I believe you probably had the wetland flagged by a wetland scientist.
I would assume so. It was on the survey, but I don't know for.
So perhaps that person could help with a little more information on how this plan could affect the wetland.
Correct, right.
Just looking up.
Alexis, could you just show us the context, as you mentioned a pond and water course? I just want to understand, are we talking about just are we talking about a wetland, or is it wetland water course, or how does it relate to the?
So it's a wetland and water course. Let's see, let me go back to my photos. One second. Let's see. Let's see, I was trying to use GIS, but I have a laptop memory problem when I try to do Zoom in GIS. Let's try. I'll do an aerial photo. Okay. Okay, so here's the toe of slope silt fence line, and most of the wetland is just off the property in this location, but there are two little fingers that come up here and approximately here. This one is clearly a there is a stormwater collection system at the end of Edith where it is piped, and then there is an outlet approximately here, so it comes down and then goes into the wetland area. This area on Winnapot condos, this is Beacon Street, just off the map. This is a ponded area. I wouldn't quite call it a pond. It's an area that has water above ground and a significant population of Phragmites, which you can kind of see in this photo. So this is water, and there's water kind of here in what previously had been a pond. I presume it's very circular, so I presume it was a dug pond when the condos were built, which most likely was right before the wetland regulations were adopted in the early 70s. And so then, in addition to this ponded area, the wetland scientist indicated that this kind of valley area is also wetland soils. And unfortunately, I can't open GIS to show you the aerial photo and the topography at the same time. I can certainly make some maps and add those to the website that show these aerial photos with an overlay of the previously existing topography. But this area is kind of a relatively high point. This whole area kind of through here is a bit of a valley. So this is this point here is higher than here, and it's similar to here, if that makes sense. So there's a valley that runs through the subject property. And then the valley continues with a higher elevation here, but a low point here, and it's in that low point just south of the property where the wetland is. Did that help at all? By pointing and clicking?
In terms of the grading that's proposed, is it still a valley, or how does that relate to the elevations
Right.
around?
So I'll share.
Because just thinking about how the underground water is gonna run.
Let's see. I have to fit it all on a screen. Okay, so you can, if we start with the light gray contour lines, which are these, when you have a kind of a V, or this is more of a U, that's a valley. So if you were to walk along this elevation, you wouldn't go up or down, you'd stay at that same elevation. And so this kind of shape is indicative of a valley. So your valley kind of had been here. And what is proposed, same concept, this is the proposed contour. A swale is proposed along these contours here. And so previously water came down this valley and more or less ended up, well, here. And what's proposed is in the solid lines is a swale that would capture any water sheet flow coming across the watershed from this direction. And instead of the pipe originally installed, it would travel within this swale that would outlet at approximately the same location. So that's surface water. Groundwater, I don't foresee any changes to groundwater since for the most part, all of this work has been done above the existing grade or above groundwater, if that makes sense. And then likewise on this side, there's a little bit of a what will effectively be kind of a swale or kind of a small valley. If that makes sense. So you have a small valley here, small valley that extends into a swale here.
Is it the road on the other side of the property on that side towards where the swale is going?
Let's see, I can't, got multiple computers. Hold on a second.
Sorry.
Can't see beyond my laptop. You're talking about over here?
No, on the left-hand side. That side.
This is these are two other properties. So
Those
this
okay.
a hill that goes up. So this is actually a high point along here, actually.
Okay.
Relatively high point. So it's at let's see. So
That's
here's
fine. Just from the picture, I saw a road and I wasn't sure if that's where
right.
the road was, and I got it.
Yeah, this is a stone wall.
Got it.
Road is off the page.
Thanks, Alexis.
Okay.
So I guess I'm gonna speak for myself. I have some concerns about a 2-to-1 slope. I think that if it's kept, I think we need some reassurance that it's going to be stable and not erode into the wetland, be it with more robust plantings or other means. And I think, you know, if it is a 2-to-1 slope, we may need to have more information from, you know, a wetland scientist or somebody who can assess the impact to the wetland. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments about it.
And
Uh,
last thing, for understanding, sorry.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll put in my 2 cents here. I would like to see the elevations pulled back more, just so we do have more of a gentler slope and get it back to more of the original than what's being proposed. So that's just my thought on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Breslin, were there any other comments?
No, I just want to be
Okay.
sure that I understand that the water course, in summary, the water course is is drainage, and that basically ends in that pond, but that's not a pond, correct? Is that the extent of where the water?
Yeah, it doesn't continue, there's no direct nexus, I hate to use that word, but it does kind of end there. I'm sure that there is a head wall structure somewhere in there for an outlet. And then I would assume that it goes across Main Avenue and discharges to the Norwalk River. But there's nothing in between, there's nothing adjacent to it. There's no further downslope wetlands or water bodies that are present anymore.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say, I agree with Ed that my preference would be to see it more back to what the original grading was within the upland review area. Unless a wetland scientist could say that there's not an impact, and there's, you know, what would need to be true for that to not have an impact, an erosion.
Okay. Since this is just a receipt and discussion, if the applicant and engineer don't have any more comments, I think you have some direction from us. So, and you can use Alexis as a resource to help you navigate it. So,
Okay, yes, thank you very much.
okay,
Sounds good.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Talk
evening.
to you soon.
All right.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on to discussion and or decision for S23-622, 27 Bonnie Brook Road. For corrective action to allow the pool, deck, shed, parking area, and removal of trees adjacent to a wetland and water course. So it looks like we have.
Yeah,
Yep,
I
sorry.
did a staff memo. Nope, I was just gonna summarize your summary. You originally had some comments regarding the planting plan, so a revised plan was submitted and briefly discussed at the last meeting. I drafted a resolution, an attempt to get the corrective action moving, and also tried to react to some of the comments that were made at the last meeting regarding the robustness of the proposed buffer. Yeah, so it would, the draft resolution, if you were to choose to make a decision tonight, you don't have to make a decision tonight. Your decision deadline is August 8th, which is your next meeting. But if you were to adopt this, what you're adopting is an approval with 4 special conditions. The first is that the work be completed within the next 4 months, which would bring it to the fall planting season. Basically, you don't want to have anyone plant in July and August. To submit a bond, to establish a wetland and watercourse buffer, and that condition 3 includes the amendments that the shrubs and trees be taller and that a minimum of 3 of the proposed 5 shade trees be planted within 50 feet of the upland review area, which would bring them closer to the water course that you are working to protect. And then lastly, to provide photos once the work's done. That's it for me.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any comments about the resolution?
And then
Um, Just have one, just how many
Yeah.
trees were taken down in the upland review area?
let me go back to my notice violation, but I think we counted at least 10. I know that on the site plan notes that at least 10 trees were removed. And then I believe, hold on a second.
And then we have 3 that are going back in the upland review area.
3 shade trees and then, hold on, let me go back to. So the notice of violation said that at least 10 large shade trees were removed from the rear yard. Some of those were within, well, I said all of the activities are within the 100 feet of the water course. So the majority of the trees were within 50 feet of the wetland, but not all of them. Some of the trees were further in the what would that be? South. So many tabs open, this is bad. Do
you think we could see the planting plan
Yes.
again? Maybe?
That.
And Mr. Carey, have there been any changes since the last time we saw it?
No.
Thank you.
And just for the record, we have take no exceptions to any of the comments from Mrs. Caracatti. We agree, we'll amend the plan as needed to resolve the violation.
So this dashed line is the 50-foot upland review area from the wetland flags. The wetland flags are very proximal to the water course. The water course 100-foot upland review area encompasses the entire property, so it's not shown. And one of the comments was that the shade trees in particular were fairly removed from the area of tree removal. And the area of tree removal was mostly along this area here. Being very general. So 3 of those, one's already within the 50-foot upland review area, but these other 2 would have to be somewhere within this area. Preferably spread out so that they provided additional shade to the water course. And then to answer your other question regarding the other shrubs, 5 of the shrubs would be the larger shrubs, the serviceberry, which if left unpruned would not be shade trees, but they would be small trees, small multi-stems. I think that was the question earlier.
Okay, thank you. So, what does anybody have any comment about the resolution? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I would like to see more, if there were 10 trees taken out from the upland review area, I'd like to see more shade trees being put back into the upland review area, considering that, we're not really directly dealing with the pool and the placement of into the upland review area. It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I would second that too. Get some more big trees in there.
What do you think of placing all 5 of the trees in the upland review area, or are you looking for more trees?
I am looking for more trees, shading the water course there.
Same.
Okay. Alexis, I mean, can we make an amendment to the resolution to increase the trees?
Yeah, absolutely. So my memo is just guidance. And at the end of the day, any resolution is yours. So as long as conditions are tied back to wetland impacts, then you can amend, you can modify, limit or
Okay.
condition any approval.
So a few extra shade trees would qualify, it seems like, to shade the stream.
Right.
Okay.
So anyone making a motion would make the motion to adopt the resolution, but with the following modifications, and then just say what you would change. Absolutely.
Okay. Does anybody want to weigh in on how many trees they would like to see, or would you like to see the applicant come back with a more robust plan of trees?
Well, I think for our own purposes, it would be nice to have it on paper before we accept their resolution, just so we know where they're going.
Okay. That sounds pretty reasonable. All right, well, I guess I should ask, does anybody want to put forward the resolution? It seems like we probably don't want to, but just want to make sure that there's nobody who just wants to amend it as it is. Okay. So Mr. Carey, I think we need some more trees.
Just from a logistical standpoint, I will say, as a licensed arborist and professional wetland scientist, that the site is going to get pretty tight with the size of the trees as far as from a maturity standpoint. So while you might have some mortality by adding more trees, they would be, if they were to die, they'd be removed. If you were to put, 10 large type maple trees and they were to all grow to full maturity, you'd be looking at a crowding situation based on the plan that was presented. The spacing of the trees already is within 15 feet of each other. So, at full maturity, they will be kind of growing into each other. I just wanted to put that out there. So while we don't have a problem adding more trees, you are going to be looking at kind of a spacing issue going forward. That's kind of why we place the amount of riparian plantings in the buffer area as much as we did. We do understand the sensitivity of the riparian area and trying to protect that, and also provide some radiant cooling to the adjacent stream course. So there's no problem adding a couple more trees on that side, but to try to accommodate what was previously there, which was, and I'm just going off of from what the applicant is telling me, or the former applicant, is that a lot of them were dead tulip trees that he was advised to take down by his arborist at the time. So that's what I've been told. I have no problem amending the plan. I just wanted to let you know of the logistics of the possible logistics of adding that many more trees in that density of an area.
Okay, thank you. I think what we're asking for, I think, is 5-foot trees. So I think, we have some time before
Yep.
they would be, too large for the site. So I think maybe next meeting, if we have a revised plan, we can definitely move forward.
Not a problem.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so should we move on to S23-623, 129 Woodward Ave? Expansion of the parking lot?
Right, so this application was received at your last meeting, and there are some initial comments. I think Commissioner Clocky had indicated the desire to have the sedimentation erosion control plan updated because it showed the silt fence going through the wetland. And then likewise, I had some questions about the stormwater management plan and its review by Public Works. And the applicant, who's also represented by Mr. Carey, has not yet submitted any new information. But since it was received at the last meeting, you do have some time before your decision deadline approaches.
And I will have those updated plans to you early next week. I'm suffering from vacation, people being on vacation in the office, so trying to manage this through the summer is always a little bit of a challenge.
Definitely. Well, we still have some time on it, so that's good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Night.
Have a nice night. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to bond release and reduction requests for S16-488 227 New Canaan Avenue. It looks like they're looking for the release of their bond for construction of a new single-family residence. So how is the site looking?
So this was a 2016 permit to build a new house. Then they actually received a corrective action permit modification when they didn't quite follow their approved plan. And I'll just share my screen real quickly. The short story is that it looks okay-ish. So this is the new house here. This is the wetland corridor. This is Orchard Lake condos to get your bearing. And then the Merritt is just off the screen off this way. This is New Canaan Avenue. Oops. They did a boulder demarcation wall where everything on this side was supposed to be buffer, and then these are buffer boulders as well. The inspectors found 38 shrubs, I believe, so that is close to an 83% survival rate, which is actually remarkably pretty good for the length of time that the plantings have been there. They did find a lot of non-native invasive plants. So that's always a kind of a tough management issue. And I can show you some site photos.
Was invasive plant management part of the permit?
Unfortunately, it was not. So I think that the non-natives invaded during the project. So we don't have a clear requirement for management. So this is on the western side. These are the some of the boulders and the planted area that drops down into the wetland is this corridor along here. So a lot of the shrubs still are there, but as you go along, you start to see some more non-native vines, but again, this is looks like clethra. So the shrubs are all there. They have a lot of grape that had been there on the adjacent property, but it's moved in. That is great. This is the boulder retaining wall. Again, some of the shrubs, but then the rest is, so there may have been more shrubs. They honestly had trouble getting through some of the vegetation down there, and they have maintained this is the boulder, and then a more buffer, which has been maintained previously. That was the shrubs were removed and lawn was established. That's kind of what it looks like today. So
Do we have a
consider
minimum standard for?
for vitality or survivability.
Yeah,
Not really. I generally, if it's less than 80%, I call it to your attention as far as kind of a on the cusp of not really meeting it. It depends on what was planted. So sometimes you have large plants, but not a lot of them, and those tend to have more issues. Other times you have a lot of plants. The approach is to plant a lot and to a plant smaller, and then kind of account for, some mortality. I also generally look for whether the intent of the plan was met. And so if the idea is that this is, a mowed grass area, this is upland buffer, and then down here is the water course, is this buffer effective in buffering the wetland from the activities that you normally would see in an active residential area? So part of why they come to you, because at the end of the day, you're the ones that release the bonds. If it's clearly not going to, if it's really bad and has clearly not met the intent of that original make a buffer or enhance a buffer condition, I loop back to the permittee and tell them that this isn't going to fly. If it seems pretty good, I send it to you. But as the agency, you're the ones that determine whether this is good enough or not.
okay. Well, I mean, it does look like the buffer is working. They're not in there.
Right.
So, I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
I didn't see the before in terms of, what was the action that had taken in of the planting, or whether this was coming up from dirt. So I guess, it's hard to assess whether, because of the impact, it allowed that opportunity for more invasives to kind of come in, or I know that invasives are a problem generically.
Right.
There's going to be some, but I don't know whether this is worse basically than because of, I'm just trying to.
Right. I'm going through looking for some.
Is that in the purview of our feedback though, if there was not any stipulation for invasive? I mean, I agree. Totally. I just don't know if that is that, part of our feedback or our approval for the bottom release if it wasn't in the.
Yeah, I'd say that it looks, I'm trying to find. Let's see.
Unfortunate timing, that seems like.
Yeah, I think it would look very different in the spring also. Let's see. Info. So this is what it looked like in the spring of 2021. This is where I had gone back out, and actually this was then used as lawn. So this area is no longer lawn, but you can kind of see, this is obviously mid-November. You can see some vines coming. It wasn't quite as thick, but it was definitely kind of they planted among, it wasn't all, back to Catherine's, was it dirt? No, it was the intent was that area was undisturbed with the development, and they were supposed to enhance it with additional shrubs. They did bring in fill to make this grade, and I don't know if that's where a lot of the weed seed came in. But I mean, they had some vine growth starting in November 2021. That's kind of the character of it. This is again still in November.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion to release the bond, or does anybody want to discuss this anymore? It looks like the buffer is effective, the stones, so, and they did do the planting per the permit, so I feel like, even though it may not be exactly what we would want to see, that it might be something to release at this point. They're not going to be disturbing the wetland, most likely, based on that wall that they have there. So I guess I'll make a motion to release the bond for S16-488 for 227 New Canaan Ave. Do I have a second? Seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I,
All right, so approval of minutes. Has anybody read them? Oh, what?
And then after minutes,
Sorry.
keep going with minutes, and then could
Okay.
I ask for an amendment to the agenda to add a item for assessment of permit need that came in today? So it was not on the agenda.
Okay, yes, of course. I will do that after approval of minutes, I guess. Did anybody read them?
I read them.
Okay, how'd they look?
They look good.
Okay, thank you. I didn't have a chance between work and getting to the meeting, so,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
okay, do we have a second? Okay, all in favor? I'm gonna trust you guys.
I wasn't there, so I don't know if I have
Right.
to abstain, but
Okay. Abstain.
they look nice anyway. I don't.
All right, and so we need to amend the agenda to have a review of whether or not a potential permit is needed for an application. So do I need to make a motion for that? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second, yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Knight, all in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passed, so we are amending the agenda and
All right. So this will be quick. So most of you will recall the iPark property on Main Avenue, 761 Main Avenue, and they recently made or received a corrective action permit from you for work that they had done along the banks of the Norwalk River. And that was vegetation removal here and vegetation removal here. And then in this area, they had excavated a ginormous pit and placed the fill material or the excavated material here, and they were in the process of digging out the head wall and making changes to this pipe. They submitted a plan that dealt with all of that and you approved it. I had also cited them for adding parking spaces. So this is, let me go to another map. Well, actually, maybe I won't go to another map. You all may remember. So to get to iPark, south of the view that's shown on this map is a bridge from Main Avenue into the iPark complex. And if you go in and turn right, this is the parking area along here. This is the original old PerkinElmer building. And iPark had also, without a permit, excavated this area and changed the grade here to install these additional parking spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, about 14 parking spaces. This dotted line is the 50-foot upland review area. And this dotted line up here is the 100-foot upland review area. So they have submitted an application to correct that. If you recall, from the river, there's a steep bank up, and then this is actually a high point that's lawn, and then it slopes back down to the parking area. And they had asked if it could be a minor or intermediate. And I had said, well, that would be determined once you submit your plan, because in addition to the parking areas, you're going to have to meet city standards for stormwater. And I want to see where your solution for meeting the stormwater standards is going to go. So they are proposing just adjacent to the parking area in this kind of berm adjacent to the river, Cultex, and I believe an oil, and a manhole. So the only thing that is, in addition to the parking, which is pretty clear cut, and you can see today, the pipes here and here are already existing, but this Cultec unit would be also proposed. So my question is, are you comfortable with this being a corrective action minor permit, which is a staff approved permit? Or since you've already in part discussed the violation, is this a application that you would like to see in front of you? Do you feel it warrants more than a minor permit? And so again, what the activities would be: the expansion of the parking lot here, the minorish grading adjacent to the parking, and then the excavation of this area to install a detention system within this area here. The catch basin is existing, and there is a pipe that comes all the way across to this catch basin and then out. And so this is already there, is my understanding, but this would be new. And I
So the parking is already in place?
Yes, this is a corrective action application. The parking was installed. I'd have to look at my notice violation. It was installed, I think, two years ago during the pandemic. So the parking lot was installed without permits.
And they installed the drainage, but without the standards for the city.
Correct. Or without any wetland permits or site plan permits, without permits. Yeah.
Can you, sorry, Alex, can you repeat what the two options are that you stated?
Absolutely. So it's either you have three three levels of permits. I call it the small, medium, and large. Minor, which is a staff approved permit. intermediate, which is an agency approved, an agency reviewed application, I should say. And then the significant, which is an agency reviewed application that requires a public hearing. And I can just read. So a minor permit, the levels of those, it really depends on the scope of the activity, how much earth disturbance there is, and how much change to the landscape, and then the proximity of that change to the wetland or watercourse. I'm going to stop sharing. So state statute prohibits any activity directly in a wetland or in a watercourse from being a minor permit. But activities within the buffer can be covered by a minor permit. So this is relatively far away, and normally I would say it was a minor. But you had seen it previously, so I just want to make sure that it wasn't something that you were after the review of the conditions at iPark, that it wasn't something you were expecting to see, or if anyone had any strong opinions. So that's really why I'm bringing it back to you, because normally you don't have an active discussion in the violation process, but you did with this one. So that's really my question.
So the big pit you said next to the river has nothing to do with this actual.
Not with this one. Yes.
Got it.
The big pit was previously covered by a separate. So what happened was we received a complaint about the pit. We went out, we saw clearly there was a pit, clearly there was vegetation removal. We issued an order covering all those. And then I always go back and I make maps and I look at aerial photographs and I said, oh my gosh, they've expanded this parking area. And so in the middle of all that, an additional notice of violation was issued for the expansion of the parking lot.
Okay, context, that was good, thank you.
Yes.
Yep, and we did have them stabilize the slopes and everything with plantings and, kind of remediate what they had done in the previous.
Yeah, they have not started
application.
yet, but I'm hopeful that
I mean, do they have erosion control on the plans? Like, are we, I mean,
Yep.
do you feel it's not like there's a lot of planting that you can't do planting on top of the Caltech system, so.
right, have proposed planting that you had previously approved with the other work.
Yeah,
Just
are any plants
They
coming out?
They
Any
had a
trees?
tree over where the Caltex is looking. I just pulled up on their landscape plan.
Yes.
If we could, I mean, if it was like a minor thing, if we could get 2 trees kind of just to shade those new parking spots, if they need to move that one tree, because they can't plant that one tree over that area.
Okay, let me look at.
I don't know what tree it is, or it could be one of the existing, I don't know if there's 2 existing beech trees there.
Let's see, landscape plan. It's not. Okay, so those are the 2 existing trees. They do propose, let me go back, tree protection for those 2 existing trees.
Can
So
minor
the lands-
permits
on-
include,
On the landscaping plan, they make the trees look huge, but then on the engineering plan, they make them look small, which is funny. But they are proposing, these are those 2 existing trees that are shown on the landscape plan, and they are proposing tree protection for those. Yeah, so they weren't proposing any new trees in the vicinity of the Caltech. Those are existing trees that are on the engineering plan more accurately located, I'd say, than on the landscaping plan.
thoughts? Do you ever require plantings or anything like that, or is it just soil stabilization with minor?
We sometimes do. Let me just show. Let me just share the. Probably.
I mean, we've already had plenty of time with this group.
Right, so this is the planting plan. So these are those two existing trees. The Coltec is in this area, as Ms. Knight noted.
Oh,
But when you go out there, this tree is further down here. It's not where the Coltec is. And so they are proposing, you know, this was already approved. You know, these plantings. So for this one, I don't know if I necessarily would include any additional trees up above. So that might be something if anyone feels strongly about, you know, adding more trees, then it should probably go back to you.
anyone? It's a decent planting plan down there. I don't know. I think I would be fine with it being a minor permit.
I would go with the minor permit too at this point.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at where the actual existing is versus the landscape plan, it doesn't look like it's going to impact the landscape plan as approved.
Right. Okay. Just want to be super cautious and not step on your guys'
Yeah,
toes.
no, we don't want to, we don't want to bring this one back up, I think at this point.
Sounds
Hopefully
good.
we'll see them again. That's all I have to say.
Amen.
Starting to get the picture.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so I guess we move on to conservation initiatives. And does that include the zoning that we were looking at? Is that
Yes.
under that header?
Yes.
Okay. So I did a little research on trees and the requirements with the new zoning. That was my task. I still feel like I need to do a little more because I didn't totally digest everything, but from what I could tell, there is some zoning requirements on street fronts, but it depends upon the zone. And it doesn't seem to include all the zones, and I'm not totally sure why. And there do seem to be requirements for parking lots as well that seem fairly robust. And the requirement that the trees planted are native trees as well, according to like native to Connecticut.
Right.
Specifically. So they do seem to cover a lot of bases, but some questions that I came up with while I was doing it, and I just need some more time is, you know, why there aren't requirements. It doesn't seem like there are requirements for street trees, for certain districts like the hospital district, the general urban district. I mean, they have it for the general urban corridor district and the general urban water district, but I don't really understand why it wouldn't, you know, kind of cover all commercial, you know, buildings and things like that. So, and it may just be that I didn't dig into the zoning as much.
Okay,
as
and I can with a specific question like that, I can definitely look into it myself or ask one of the planners.
Okay, that would be fantastic, because it seemed like, you know, I mean, I understand not as much of a requirement on, you know, single family homes and like, you know, smaller residential, but anywhere that's an urban corridor having, you know, street trees. I know sometimes that's not totally possible, but it still should be something that would be reviewed and discussed, you know, potentially in the planning department, or the plant, you know, by the planning commission, you know, brought to their attention, oh, well, you know, this is the reason we can't do street trees. Because I know sometimes that does happen when it's like, pretty urban. There are the other special districts, the marine, commercial, and island conservation that don't seem to include it as well.
Right, well, the island conservation, and that one kind of makes sense because it, there aren't any streets
Oh,
on the island zones. So those
there you
are
go.
only for,
See?
so that one I agree with, but for the, hospital zone,
Yeah, the only four
Look it up.
places that I found it was required was CD 4C,
mhm,
CD 4W, SDHI, and SDLI. So it was like general urban corridor, general urban water, special district heavy industrial, and special district light industrial where it's actually required.
okay.
And then the other districts it wasn't. And I kind of wonder why it's not in all the urban areas and also the civic district. So,
Okay. I will get to the bottom of it.
okay, thank you. Catherine, were you able to look? I printed out in black and white the sheet that Steve sent to everybody, and so I can't tell what colors belong to which people. So I'm not sure what you were you had volunteered to look at, but were you able to review anything?
Yeah, I've been looking at the EV charging and some of the other, and I also was able to connect with some of the groups that were very positive in wanting to support and weigh in. And I spoke with one of the town councilors. I think Lisa Shanahan is chair of the Sustainability Council for the
Ad hoc committee of the.
ad hoc committee of sustainability. And she suggested that they're not meeting in August. Their next meeting is in September, that we set up a joint workshop to go through, because they would also like to look at opportunities to add in green comments to the planning and zoning. So it might make sense to pool resources or, insight into a broader commentary. She said that one of the things that they were looking at too was just on the composting, because it's a big issue for waste management, and especially in the multi-family homes, to create opportunities and housing for people to not just have recycling and regular waste, but to have compost.
That's a great idea.
Composting in there. So I thought, there's a lot of overlap probably, and more language, and it might be helpful to connect with them.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Lisa Shanahan, she is one of the town councilors, common council.
On the, yes,
Common Council, and is on the ad hoc, or chairs, I think, the ad hoc Sustainability Council.
Thank
Yep,
you.
she also used to be a commissioner before she moved on.
Okay, yeah. And she's also with the Norwalk Land Trust, yeah.
Okay,
So that was a meeting sometime in September?
Yeah, so
Okay.
she was going to, I think has a family commitment, so she's out of town for a little bit, but would connect to set up what she would call a workshop.
Great, thank you.
And the coastal
yeah.
resilience zoning, I missed the last meeting because they moved it at the last minute to a date that I was not available, but I hope to look at the materials to see what's coming out of that could potentially feed into an overlay zone. I know that there were questions raised. Alexis, I don't know if you were at the meeting.
no, I was not, but I think that Michelle sent, and I'm still digging out from emails, but I believe that Michelle from my office did send a link for a recording of the stakeholder meeting that we both missed. And I think that either she or I will be sending another follow-up email. So one of the things that came out of the Resilient Sono stakeholder last meeting was looking for direction. So you'll be getting an email from either Michelle or I tomorrow about that. But one of the things that they are going to suggest is an overlay districts, which are utilized in the zoning code to kind of, you have your base districts. So those were all the community districts that you had, listed the CD for CD3L. And then there are overlay districts where all of the requirements of the base district apply, but these overlay districts address specific issues. And so like the flood hazard zone is a overlay district. The CAM area is an overlay district. And one of the things coming out of that, the Resilient Sono study would be further exploration of what a resilience corridor overlay district might look at. And so that is one of the things that Circa and their consultant AECOM will be pursuing further in the next couple of weeks. But that was one of the things that was discussed, I guess, when we weren't there. Yeah, timing wise for the rewrite, I'm not quite sure where that is, but it's a fantastic idea. And so basically it would take, we have to have a flood hazard overlay district because there are certain requirements for being in the National Flood Insurance Program for meeting FEMA standards. But this would be a different district that would, in the areas where this overlay district have not been discussed at all, but the idea is to have an overlay area for certain areas that are more prone to either storm surge, are likely to be more greatly impacted by sea level rise in the near and far future, or nuisance kind of tidal monthly flooding. And so what that would look like, I don't know yet, but that's what they're tasked with providing us with. But
one area that I wanted to add that, when I was looking at some of the green zoning initiatives, and, I think Steve probably might have some input to give, so it would be helpful when we next meet, is what they did in Aspen, Colorado on incentivizing people, and limiting tear downs. Because even though there's energy efficiency gains, they were looking at the net to say that there's a huge carbon toll for, doing, not, my brain's kind of fried at the end of the day.
Right. But not
The
demolishing.
embodied carbon.
Demolishing, but what you call them,
Yeah.
renovating or rehabilitating or, reutilizing, the architecture. So, if there's some way to maybe add that in as some sort of an incentive.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot coming out about the embodied carbon.
Right.
Like using like LCA as a model for looking at carbon rather than just emissions based or anything like that. So I think that's a good addition.
What's LCA?
Sorry, life, I don't know, life cycle analysis. So basically
Oh, okay.
it looks at all the materials, and then the construction, the waste during construction, the transportation, all of the emissions calculated for all of that, sort of the cradle to cradle idea with materials and
Yeah.
all of the other, and the a lot of models have looked at the operating emissions, but not sort of the embodied carbon of the materials, and basically throwing them out and starting over versus repurposing, as Catherine had mentioned. So
Because concrete is
Gotcha.
very carbon intensive material, right?
Right.
Yeah, because they were
Yeah.
saying like, even if you build a greener home, it takes a longer time to accrue those benefits. And given where the carbon load is currently in the atmosphere, sooner is better.
That's great. I hadn't heard of that before, that idea of incentivizing not tearing down homes. I know that around here, there's a lot of that. Maybe not as much in Norwalk, but definitely, in this vicinity.
How do you know how any other towns incentivize that? Because I know that like around here, a lot of times if you think about why buildings are torn down, it's because the developer has done a calculus, particularly if you're making multifamily residential structures, they've done this calculus that they need a certain number of units to make it financially work, and so then if you're trying to get them to keep the factory or the structure, how do we does anyone have any example of like how do you incentivize that?
I mean, I can tell you that there's been I've been doing a lot of research lately on the conversion of commercial office space, right, to residential. And zoning aside and all of that, right, it's high end right now, and I know like Boston, I'm pretty sure is starting to incentivize it with their new building standards. The barrier obviously is that it's cheaper to tear it down, right, and start
Right.
over. And so a lot of the buildings in New York, I think 160 Water Street or something along those lines was an interesting read but how they're converting and how they're utilizing the spaces and how they're trying to make it make sense as far as the incentives go. I think, larger cities have more of an ability to do that. I don't know that a lot of people have started to do that. I mean, Aspen, you'd mentioned, I didn't know about that, but I haven't heard all too much about it yet.
Yeah, they passed an ordinance which limited the number of permits for demolition that they would grant per year.
I like that.
So only just 6.
Really? Demolition. Interesting.
I wonder how people get to be first in line.
Yeah.
I mean, they did have like, look, if the property is over 35, there would be, some waiver processes, but at least it stops the automatic thing of, let's just tear it down and start
Yeah.
over.
Interesting.
Okay.
I looked that up.
Interesting. Okay.
Any other thoughts on green initiatives we could attack in the zoning? I think we kind of looked at it last time, but I think the incentives is a good one to kind of look at.
Steve gave me his homework.
Oh, wait, did you have to do it or did he just
Yeah.
give you the result?
No, he didn't.
No.
No. He gave me his homework. That's okay. I did volunteer. I asked if
Okay.
I could help. I dug into a little bit, and by dig into, I mean look at the web page for NGBS, which is the National Green Building Standard. We had talked about what potential there is for requiring, incentivizing, etc. And so I had sent Alexis earlier, and I don't know if we want to go through this right now. I don't know if it's the appropriate time, or Steve wanted to look at it, check my homework, and he wanted to reach out to some of the municipalities. But I can just I can share my screen quickly to just give you a rundown if you'd like.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. Give
Sure.
us an overview and then, Steve can add to it too when he's back.
Yeah. yeah, I have to make sure to do a good job, or,
And one of the things that Steve and I have talked about is, well, how to, for a lot of the green building code stuff, some of it might be zoningable. And then a lot of it is building code or
Yes.
other kind of overlying ordinance. So it's
So-
one of the things we just have to try to parcel out, like, how does it potentially fit in? But
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what I was trying to look for. And unfortunately, not everything was specific on where it came from. And so NGBS is, I'll just give you a 2-second rundown is, NGBS is one of the standards. There's also LEED, there's Passive House, there's Energy Star, there's the DOE Zero Energy Ready homes. There's all sorts. So it could be this one or an equivalent, right, that people are using in these codes. So this is strictly from the NGBS website. So this is the ones that are being used with NGBS. I went through and I just tried to document. I don't think we need to, go through this to any detail, but what building type it was, which again, not all that much information, where this was coming from, right? Was this a ordinance or was this a requirement in the building code? And then some other notes. So my summary here, which is probably the more important thing, is that what I found was that NGBS, like I said, or equivalent programs are generally accepted. Or standards or building standards that are, there's some quality among them. The city programs that I found fall into 4 categories, which were building codes and green building codes. Some of them are optional and some of them are not, and they're sort of tied into the building code. Depends where. Green building ordinances, and then tax rebates and density exemptions or bonuses for compliance with the standards. The most typical that I saw on this list and that I generally see, I work with Steve, so we work in this industry, is that the requirements for multifamily high rise, which is typically 5 stories, 4 or 5 stories and above, or commercial, they're kind of categorized the same. Those are tend to be required by something. I don't know if that's if that's the purview. And where my limitation is on this stuff is I don't know how the city operates yet in terms of requirements and what an ordinance is versus, building in things. But I had said that a lot of what I see, is single family and multifamily low rise tends to be more optional and incentivized with rebates, although they're not always huge, so it depends. And then some renovations I saw were tax exempt, or they would send a rebate for the permit applications and all the permit fees, which I thought was interesting. It was an interesting model, honestly. So I threw out some straw man suggestions. This is really for Steve. He, is to discuss more. He's sort of the expert on this, but I thought that some of these, particularly, this one was interesting out of New Hampshire, where it was a voluntary incentive by zone, which I thought was interesting, because I think especially with I don't know where it's going with, but the new allowances for multifamily, if there was either some sort of ordinance or incentive for green building, it would help mitigate some of the other issues that might be involved.
right.
So that's my report.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd say
Thank
that
you.
in the current zoning under that, the CD4, the General Urban Community District, it relies on those density points. So you get, a density credit depending on, and some of them are kind of like a public amenity type of things, and then others are more, stuff like public art or free Wi-Fi or,
Sure.
that kind of thing. But then others are more environmentally focused, like habitat, green roof, blue roof, those kind of things. Solar, geothermal, where you get, but it's again that right now it's still stuck in that incentivize as
Yeah,
opposed to required for a lot of them. And so then, but then there are some where solar is required. So then trying to figure out, well, how do we
yeah, and the other question I have for Steve really is also, some of these standards of the lower end standards, like NGBS, once you get up to the gold and above, they tend to be more rigorous, but some of them with the silver, like the building code itself may actually exceed what is required. So I don't know. I'd have to, if that's something to look into. And but I do think some sort of, I would love to go down this route, especially for anything new, or to Catherine's point before, renovations, encouraging people to reuse, rather than, starting over. So anyway,
very good. And I think a lot of this, I mean, so my objective for you guys is to, at the end of the day, have a memo from the Conservation Commission to the Planning and Zoning Commission specific about zoning changes. But then I think that a really valuable kind of ancillary benefit to this is having a meeting with the ad hoc committee of the Common Council, the Sustainability Committee, because what they're looking at is really a climate action plan and things that are larger than just the zoning regulations, kind of citywide. How do we push some of this climate action agenda forward? So I think that's potentially really, really valuable for them to hear too.
you require it. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying, it's the
right.
only-
Yeah. Right. And
Yeah,
they could,
some of
they
these
could,
things are zoning and some of these things would be recommendations for ordinances.
yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Excellent. Well, I continue to kind of make a list and a spreadsheet of everything that anyone said, and then at some point we'll pull it into a document. But there definitely is time. So just keep at it, and I will track down street trees. And if you have any other like specific questions about the regulations themselves, like why, like what Cheryl asked, just send it my way and I can ask the director to clarify. And excellent.
Great. Thank you so much
Good.
for helping out. So. All right.
Yeah.
I guess we can move on unless anybody else has anything. Okay, so comments of staff? Any comments?
No, not really. So a long time ago, I used to give you kind of a report of minor permits taken and violation or enforcement actions taken. And I realized I haven't done that in a very long time. So I was going to try to start doing that probably the first meeting each month, give you what has happened the previous month. So I just started out off with the last 3 months, just to keep you guys in the loop and aware of those minor permits, the staff approved permits, kind of.
What's a minor CA of permit?
Minor, so a CA is corrective action. So anytime it's a result of.
I just wasn't sure what CA
And
stood
actually,
for.
I meant you should have the activity. I'll fix that for the going forward. That must have gotten. I just realized that I have the wrong columns. So I'll add the activity so that you know what they were doing.
Great.
But so if there's work in your neighborhood that you saw but didn't remember seeing a permit, you can now know that it hopefully got a minor permit. But that's it.
Okay, great. Comments of commissioners? No comments? Everybody's all done?
Great job, Cheryl.
Thank you. So does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn then?
I'll motion to adjourn. I'm always that person.
Okay.
that can Do it.
Great. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank
See you
you.
at the next meeting.
Take care.
Bye.